The night my bank account broke the internet, I was standing outside Belmont Royal College with a food bag in one hand and rainwater in my shoes. The app showed delivery completed, but the rich boy at the gate kept refusing to confirm it because he thought watching me beg was fun. His friends laughed from beneath the glass canopy while I stood there like a stain on their perfect campus. I told myself to stay calm, because one bad rating could cost me the week's rent. My name was Ian Raymond, and until that night, my life had only two speeds: running late or running broke. I delivered food before classes, after classes, and sometimes during classes when hunger at home became more urgent than attendance. Belmont Royal was the kind of college where students treated money like background music. I studied there on a temporary access scholarship, but most people only knew me as the delivery boy who entered through the service gate. The boy holding my order was Lance Vare, heir to a hotel empire and professional destroyer of small people's dignity. He opened the container, complained the fries were soft, and asked if poverty made my hands slow. His friends howled. One girl recorded me. Someone tossed a coin that bounced against my shoe. I felt every second becoming a public execution, but I still needed him to press confirm because my account had 11 rupees left. Then the college's most untouchable girl stepped out of the crowd. Arya Vale, daughter of the Vale Group, richer than everyone on that campus and colder than the marble under our feet. She looked at Lance first, then at me, and for one strange second, her expression changed like she recognized something she was not supposed to recognize. Lance smiled at her, expecting approval. Arya said nothing, and somehow her silence made the laughter thinner. I lowered my head and asked Lance again to confirm the delivery. He leaned closer and whispered that dogs who waited patiently got scraps. The people around us reacted like he had delivered a masterpiece. My fingers tightened around the empty bag, and something in me almost snapped. Not because he insulted me. I was used to that. It was because my little sister Sarah needed medicine, and this rich clown was playing with the only money I had left. That was when my phone froze. The delivery app vanished, replaced by a black screen with a single silver line. Impossible task detected. I thought the phone had glitched, but the letters sharpened as if they were burning through the glass. Task: deliver dignity to the one who has forgotten his own. Reward: full asset restoration. Failure: permanent erasure from the air registry. I stared so hard my breath stopped. I did not understand any of it. Air registry sounded like a scam ad, and asset restoration sounded like something a desperate person imagined before fainting. Lance finally tapped confirm only because Arya was watching, but he marked the order damaged and filed a complaint. My delivery rating dropped instantly. The app fined me more than the order was worth. His friends clapped like they had watched a street performer fail. I walked away before anger could make me stupid, but Arya followed me past the gate. She asked if I had received a message. My body went cold. I turned and asked how she knew. She did not answer directly. Instead, she said some systems only appear when humiliation becomes measurable. Then she looked at my cracked phone like it was a sleeping weapon. I asked who she really was, and she said the better question was who I really was. Before I could demand an explanation, Lance shouted from behind us that Arya should not waste breath on delivery trash. The black screen returned. Task updated. Return the insult without becoming the insult. My reward timer appeared, 10 minutes. My hands shook. Everything in me wanted to expose Lance, scream, shove him, ruin his perfect face with the truth of mine. But the task used one word that trapped me: dignity. I walked back to Lance while everyone expected me to apologize or explode. Instead, I opened the food bag, removed the untouched receipt, and placed it in his hand. I told him the meal had reached the right address, but the man receiving it had clearly lost more than money could buy. Then I requested, politely and loudly, that he correct the false complaint before the campus security record included deliberate wage theft. The crowd stopped laughing. Lance's smile collapsed because I had not attacked his pride directly. I had attacked his control. Security glanced at the recorded exchange, and Arya calmly asked whether Belmont's student code allowed public harassment of contracted workers. Lance cursed under his breath, canceled the complaint, and confirmed full payment. My phone pulsed once, not like a notification, but like a heartbeat. The black screen displayed 3 words: impossible task completed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then my banking app opened by itself. The balance blinked, froze, then multiplied so violently the digits no longer fit on the screen. Rupees became dollars, dollars became commas, commas became a number I could not read without losing balance. Nearby, one of Lance's friends screamed. Her phone had opened a news alert. Unidentified dormant account triggers global banking verification after sudden billionaire-level activation. The internet discovered my money before I did. Screenshots spread from students who had recorded the humiliation, then captured my stunned face as the banking system flagged my account. Within minutes, social media turned me into a spectacle. Broke delivery boy becomes mystery billionaire. Belmont's servant exposed as hidden tycoon. Some said fraud. Some said inheritance. Some said laundering. I stood under the gate lights while my phone showed a final line. Welcome back, Ian Safe Raymond. Safe was not my father's name. At least, not the father I remembered. My mother had raised me with the surname Raymond, telling me my father died before I could ask enough questions to hurt her. But the system knew another name. Arya did too. When I looked at her, she did not seem shocked by the billions. She seemed relieved, like a door she had waited years beside had finally opened. Lance stepped back as if poverty had been contagious, but wealth was dangerous. The same students who had laughed now stared at me like I might buy their families and cancel them by morning. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt terrified. A bank account that large did not feel like freedom. It felt like someone had placed a crown on my head while hiding the executioner behind the curtain. I ran before reporters could arrive. Arya caught up with me near the bus stop, where my delivery bike was chained beside a broken sign. She said I could not go home normally anymore. I asked if that was a threat. She said it was advice from the only person on campus who knew what my real last name meant. Then she unlocked a black car waiting across the road and told me my old life had ended 10 minutes ago. I almost refused, but my phone buzzed with 20 missed calls from unknown numbers. Then Sarah called crying because men in suits had appeared outside our apartment asking for me. That turned my fear into movement. I got into Arya's car, not because I trusted her, but because my family was suddenly inside a storm I could not understand. As the car pulled away, Lance stood behind the gate, pale and furious, already realizing he had humiliated the wrong delivery boy. Arya's driver moved through the city like he had been trained to escape kidnappers, not traffic. I demanded answers. Arya finally told me the safe name belonged to a private empire erased from public records after a corporate massacre 13 years ago. The founder, Zahir Safe, vanished with his heir. The world believed the child died. Arya looked at me carefully and said the child had been hidden under the name Ian Raymond. I laughed because the story was too large to fit my life. I was not an heir. I was a boy who delivered biryani to people who forgot to tip. But Arya showed me an old photo on her phone. A little boy sat beside a man with my eyes, holding a silver toy plane. Behind them stood a young girl with long hair and a serious expression. Arya tapped the girl's face and said she had known me before I forgot her. My memories did not return. They attacked. A burning mansion. My mother's hands covering my mouth. Men shouting about signatures. A little girl crying behind a glass door as I was carried away. I pressed my palms against my temples, and Arya ordered the driver to slow down. She said the system was designed to unlock only after I completed a task impossible for someone consumed by revenge. I asked who designed it. She answered with one name, my real father. We reached a private clinic owned by Arya's family, where my mother and Sarah had already been moved for protection. I found them in a guarded suite. Mother looked at me and immediately understood the lie had died. Sarah threw herself into my arms, asking if the news was true and whether billionaires still had to eat leftovers. I hugged her so tightly she complained. Mother did not smile. She only whispered that she had hoped this day would never come. I asked Mother why she hid everything. Her face seemed to age 10 years before she answered. She said my father trusted the wrong people, including his own brother, Cameron Safe. When Zahir refused to turn the family foundation into a weapon for political contracts, Cameron and the board staged a takeover. That night, loyal staff died, records burned, and Mother fled with me. She had erased my name so thoroughly even I forgot it. The billions in my account were not random. They were locked assets from the safe trust, awakened by my father's system after verifying identity, emotional restraint, and public humiliation. I asked why humiliation mattered. Mother closed her eyes. Arya answered instead. Zahir believed anyone who inherited power after being worshipped would become cruel, but anyone who inherited it after being degraded might either heal the world or burn it down. The system was built to find which one I was. I wanted to be angry at my dead father for turning my pain into a password. I wanted to be angry at Mother for hiding me. I wanted to be angry at Arya for knowing before I did. But Sarah was sitting beside me counting imaginary zeros on her fingers, and every emotion had to wait behind the fact that we were no longer safe. My bank account had broken the internet, and everyone who helped bury Ian safe now knew he was alive. By sunrise, the world had given me names I had never earned. Mystery Billionaire, Scam Prince, Delivery King, Lost Safe Heir, Fraud, Miracle, Threat. Velmont Royal suspended campus deliveries, pretending it was for security, while students reposted the video of Lance humiliating me with captions laughing at how quickly life could flip. Lance deleted his account, but the damage was done. His insult had become the trigger to a fortune, and rich kids hated miracles they did not control. Cameron Safe responded before noon. His company released a statement calling me an imposter exploiting a tragedy. He claimed the real heir had died years ago and warned banks against releasing assets connected to fraudulent claims. My phone showed a system alert. Usurper denial detected. Stage 1 inheritance conflict active. Available action, prove bloodline. Available action, expose betrayal. Available action, retaliate financially. The last option glowed red, as if it knew anger would be my easiest language. Arya told me not to touch retaliation. She had moved us to one of the Vale Group's secure residences, but I hated needing her protection. She was the richest girl in college, the person everyone feared, and apparently the only one who had been waiting for me. I asked why she had never approached me before the system activated. Her answer cut deeper than I expected. She said if she had told me early, the system might have judged her choice instead of mine. So she had watched me deliver food across campus, watched students laugh, watched Lance insult me, watched me struggle, because interfering too soon could ruin the trial. I told her that sounded convenient for a rich girl who could afford patience. For the first time, Arya flinched. She said she deserved that. Then she admitted her family had sworn to protect the safe heir only if he passed the system's first impossible task. I wanted to hate her, but memory betrayed me. The little girl behind the glass door from my nightmare had been Arya. She had not abandoned me willingly. She had been a child too. Still, knowing someone suffered did not erase the years I spent hungry. I told her protection was not trust. If she wanted to help, she would give me documents, not speeches. Arya nodded and opened a locked folder that contained my stolen life. The folder showed birth records, trust clauses, medical reports, encrypted messages from my father, and a list of people who profited from my disappearance. Cameron's name appeared everywhere. So did Velmont Royal College. My stomach tightened when I saw the connection. The SAFE Foundation had funded half of Velmont's scholarship endowment before Cameron redirected it into elite vanity projects. My temporary scholarship was not charity. It was a broken piece of my own inheritance returning by accident. That made Velmont feel different when I returned 2 days later. Security did not stop me this time. Students parted like I carried a disease made of money. Some whispered apologies at my back. Others filmed from safe distances. Lance was absent, but his fear had stayed behind. I walked through the same service gate I had used as a delivery worker, and the system displayed a quiet prompt. Observe how quickly contempt becomes caution. The dean requested a private meeting. Dean Marwick had ignored me for a year, but now he greeted me like a valued stakeholder. His smile was so polished it almost had sound. He said the college wished to support me during this confusing transition. I asked if that support included investigating the students who harassed workers on campus. The smile tightened. My phone recorded the conversation automatically, though I had not asked it to. Dean Marwick wanted me calm, quiet, and grateful. He suggested Velmont could help verify my identity discreetly if I agreed not to make public allegations involving the college's endowment history. There it was. Not concern. Damage control. The system offered a purchase. Acquire controlling influence in Velmont Royal through dormant safe shares. Cost, already owned. My hand froze. I did not need to buy the college. Apparently, my father already had. I asked the dean why Safe Foundation records were hidden from students. He pretended ignorance. The system projected a file onto my phone showing signed agreements with his name attached. For 1 second, the room went so silent I could hear his breathing. I could have destroyed him immediately. Instead, I asked for a full ledger by evening. He agreed too quickly. Men like him did not submit. They rearranged weapons. When I left the office, Arya waited near the corridor. Students pretended not to watch us, but their phones were angled like knives. She asked if Marwick threatened me. I said he smiled, which was worse. She almost laughed. For a moment, the weight between us loosened. Then Lance appeared at the end of the hall, surrounded by fewer friends than before, looking like humiliation had finally taught him how gravity worked. He approached with forced confidence and said the video had been taken out of context. I looked at him and remembered the coin, the complaint, the word dog. My phone displayed an optional action: demand public apology. Reward: reputation search. Another option appeared below it: forgive without consequence. Reward: moral vanity risk. I almost smiled at how insulting the system could be. Even forgiveness could become performance if I used it to look superior. I told Lance I did not need his apology for the internet. I needed him to correct the false report, compensate every delivery worker he had abused, and appear before the student conduct panel. His face twisted because consequences felt uglier than guilt. He said I was enjoying this. I answered honestly. Part of me was. Then I said that part would not be allowed to make policy. Arya looked at me with something like approval. Lance agreed only because fear had replaced arrogance. The system recorded proportional consequence selected. I did not know whether to feel proud or manipulated. Every choice came with analysis, every emotion with a warning. Becoming rich had not freed me from judgment. It had surrounded me with a dead man's philosophy, a living enemy's threats, and a girl who knew my past better than I did. That night, Cameron made his first direct move. Our secure residence lost power for 12 seconds. In those 12 seconds, someone tried to access the medical wing where Mother and Sarah were staying. Area's security stopped them, but one guard was injured and the intruder swallowed a data capsule before capture. The message was clear. Cameron did not care about proving I was fake. He cared about making sure I could not prove I was real. Mother begged me to leave the country. She said billions meant nothing if blood followed them. But running had already stolen 13 years from us. Sarah listened from the doorway, pretending not to cry. I realized every choice now divided my family between safety and truth. The system offered relocation packages, legal fortresses, private islands, identity erasure. For a moment, disappearing again looked merciful. Then I imagined Lance's coin, Cameron's denial, and my father's burned house. I chose proof. Aria's family arranged a DNA verification under 3 independent labs, with public timestamping, so Cameron could not bury the result. The system unlocked my father's first recorded message after the samples were submitted. Zahir's safe appeared on my phone, older than my memories and tired in a way only betrayed men look tired. He said if I was watching this, then the world had taken my name but failed to take my choice. His message did not feel like reunion. It felt like homework from a ghost. He explained that the safe fortune was divided into 3 locks: blood, restraint, and restoration. Blood proved I was heir. Restraint proved I could hold power without immediate revenge. Restoration was the final lock, requiring me to repair what the safe empire had damaged under Cameron. Until then, billions could appear in my account, but true control would remain contested. I wanted to scream at him for making inheritance conditional after leaving us defenseless. But then he said something that silenced me. He had not known who would survive the attack, so the system was built to protect the heir from allies as much as enemies. Anyone could tell a lost child he deserved revenge. Only the child could decide whether he deserved responsibility. I hated how much sense that made. The DNA results went public in 48 hours. I was iron safe. The internet exploded again, bigger than before. My bank balance screenshot had already become a meme, but the bloodline confirmation turned me into a global headline. Delivery boy confirmed as lost billionaire heir. Fraud claims collapse. Safe usurper under pressure. Belmont students who had mocked me began deleting posts with the panic of people discovering screenshots were immortal. Cameron responded by freezing every major asset tied to the trust, claiming legal dispute. The billions remained visible in my banking interface, but transactions above a limit required court clearance. It was like owning the ocean but being allowed 1 cup. The public thought I had unlimited money. My enemies knew the truth. My power was enormous, unstable, and surrounded by locks. That made people brave enough to attack. Velmont's rich students divided into tribes. Some begged for friendship. Some called me fake even after proof. Some treated me like a revenge bomb waiting to explode. The worst were the ones who suddenly spoke about how they had always respected workers. I had delivered food to half of them. I remember doors slammed in my face, tips canceled, jokes made behind my back. Their new kindness felt like cheap perfume overwrought. Arya warned me that social revenge would be the easiest trap. If I spent weeks punishing every student who insulted me, Cameron would win time. But every corridor handed me opportunities. A boy who once made me wait in the rain now offered to carry my books. A girl who filmed my humiliation asked if we could collaborate for charity. I realized wealth did not change people as much as it revealed their survival instincts. My first real move was not against Lance or the dean. It was against the delivery platform. I requested all data on worker complaints connected to Velmont. The company refused until my legal team mentioned safe investment rights. Suddenly, files appeared. Late confirmations, false damage claims, unpaid tips, harassment reports buried as customer satisfaction issues. I had thought my humiliation was personal. It was actually a business model built on workers being too replaceable to fight. The system displayed restoration path available, worker dignity fund. Estimated public impact, moderate. Estimated revenge satisfaction, low. I laughed bitterly at the honesty. Then I funded a legal and emergency support program for campus delivery workers, drivers, cleaners, and temporary staff. It did not trend like my bank account had. It did not make Lance cry. But the first worker who received stolen wages messaged a simple thank you, and I felt something steadier than victory. Cameron's people noticed. A business channel aired a segment asking whether the lost heir was emotionally stable enough to manage serious assets after wasting funds on sentimental causes. The panelists spoke like restoring stolen wages was childish. The system flagged coordinated narrative attack. Suggested counter. Display personal wealth dominance. Suggested action. Luxury purchase spectacle. I almost chose it, just to shut them up with numbers. Arya stopped me by asking who the spectacle would feed. I snapped that she did not understand what it felt like to be called unstable by people who stole my life. Arya's face hardened. She said she understood being reduced to a symbol by families who smiled while controlling your breathing. Then she walked away before I could apologize. I had forgotten that the richest girl in college was also a daughter inside a cage. Money did not make pain fake. It only made people less sympathetic toward it. I found her later in the private archive room, standing before a wall of safe and veil partnership records. She told me our families had arranged a future alliance when we were children, not necessarily marriage, but shared guardianship of the foundation. She had grown up with adults speaking of me like a dead responsibility. When she saw me delivering food at Velmont months ago, alive and unaware, she wanted to run to me. Instead, duty chained her mouth. I asked why she kept watching. She said because every time I was humiliated, she needed to know whether I would become cruel once power returned. My anger rose again, but this time I heard the grief beneath her words. Arya had been testing me because the world had tested her first. That did not make it right. It made it human. I told her I did not want to be studied. She said then I should let her stand beside me, not above me. Our alliance became official the next morning. Not romantic, not corporate theater, but a legal cooperation between the Awakened Safe Trust and Veil Group Protective Authority. The announcement made Velmont lose its mind. Some students said Arya had chosen me because of money. Others said she had known all along and manipulated the rise. Both were partly true and completely wrong. We were not a couple in a fairy tale. We were two heirs trying not to become our family's mistakes. Cameron filed a petition demanding psychiatric evaluation before asset transfer. His argument was elegant poison. A boy raised in poverty, suddenly exposed to billions, could be exploited by hostile families. He painted Arya as the manipulator and Mother as unreliable. Reading the petition made me feel dirty. He had stolen my life, and now he was using the damage he caused as proof I did not deserve to reclaim it. The court scheduled an emergency hearing. My legal team prepared bloodline proof, trust documents, and financial records. I prepared myself not to look furious, which was harder. Mother offered to testify, but the thought of Cameron's lawyers tearing through her past made my stomach turn. She noticed, and told me she had not survived 13 years to become furniture in my story. If truth needed her voice, she would use it. The hearing became a battlefield without raised swords. Cameron entered like a grieving uncle, all controlled sorrow and expensive humility. He looked at me with wet eyes and said he wished I were truly his nephew, but dangerous people had filled my head with lies. I almost stood up. Arya's hand touched my wrist under the table, light but firm. Not control. Reminder. I breathed until the anger stopped driving. Mother testified first. She described the night of fire, the forged death report, the loyal driver who died getting us out, and the years spent moving whenever Cameron's investigators came too close. Cameron's lawyer suggested trauma had distorted her memory. Mother did not flinch. She opened a small cloth pouch and placed my childhood silver toy plane on the table. My father's initials were engraved underneath. The courtroom went still. Then Arya testified. She admitted she had recognized me before the system activated. Cameron's lawyer tried to turn that into conspiracy. Arya looked at the judge and said recognizing a stolen child was not conspiracy, hiding the theft was. The line spread online within minutes. For the first time, public opinion shifted from curiosity to outrage. Cameron's grief mask cracked at the corners. My turn came last. I did not perform poverty. I did not beg to be believed. I told the court I had worked deliveries, studied under scholarship access, and lived without my name because someone powerful profited from my disappearance. I said I was not asking for sympathy. I was asking for the court to stop treating the consequences of theft as evidence against the stolen. Even my lawyer looked surprised. The judge refused Cameron's psychiatric petition and ordered temporary protective control of personal trust funds to remain with me, pending full trial. It was not total victory, but it was enough. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted about my next move. The system offered a press domination package with perfect lines calculated to crush Cameron publicly. I declined and said only one sentence. Restoration begins with everyone he taught to stay silent. That sentence became a door. Former SAFE employees contacted us. Old accountants, retired drivers, foundation staff, even one former board secretary. They had pieces of the night my family fell. Cameron had not acted alone. He had used debt, blackmail, ambition, and fear to build a throne over ashes. The richest families around Velmont had benefited too. Suddenly the story was no longer lost heir versus evil uncle. It was a whole class of people exposed by one delivery boy's return. Velmont Royal tried to distance itself from Cameron, but records betrayed them. SAFE Foundation funds had been redirected into luxury campus expansions while worker welfare programs vanished. The dean offered to create a commemorative scholarship in my father's name. I told him dead men did not need plaques as much as living students needed refunds. The meeting ended badly, which meant honestly. I used my partial asset access to launch an independent audit of Velmont's endowment ties. Dean Marwick called it aggressive. Students called it drama. Workers called it overdue. Lance avoided me completely until the conduct panel forced his appearance. He arrived with lawyers, looking smaller without his audience. The panel played recordings from delivery workers he had mocked, underpaid, or falsely reported. His face moved through anger, shame, and calculation. When asked to respond, Lance claimed everyone did it. That was the first true thing he had said. The room hated it because it spread guilt beyond him. I requested restitution for every documented worker, mandatory service work, suspension from student leadership events, and a public correction of his false complaint. His lawyer objected. The workers did not. Consequence landed not like revenge, but like weight returning to a stolen scale. After the panel, Lance cornered me near the stairs and asked if I felt powerful now. I told him yes, and that was why I was being careful. He laughed bitterly and said I would become worse than him once people stopped clapping for my humility. I hated that the warning sounded similar to my own fear. The system displayed no task, no reward, only a blank reflection of my face on the screen. That night, I visited the old apartment with Sarah. The hallway smelled the same, the paint still peeling, the neighbors still pretending not to stare. Sarah asked if we would forget this place. I said forgetting was how people became dangerous. She nodded with the seriousness of a child who had grown too quickly. Then she asked if billionaires could still eat spicy noodles from the corner shop. I told her that might be legally required. We ate on the rooftop, and for an hour the world did not ask me to be heir, victim, symbol, or judge. Sarah talked about school. Mother laughed for the first time in days. I realized money had not given me peace. It had given me the ability to protect peace when it appeared. That was different. Peace still had to be chosen, defended, and shared, or wealth would simply build higher walls around loneliness. The next week, Cameron attacked through family. He produced a woman claiming to be my father's secret second wife with a son who supposedly outranked me. The internet swallowed it greedily. Another heir meant more drama. The boy, Rayan, looked about 16 and terrified. His mother spoke too smoothly. My first instinct was to crush the lie immediately. Arya advised investigation. Mother said children should not be punished for adults using them. The DNA test proved Rayan was not Zahir's son, but the deeper truth was uglier. His mother owed money to lenders tied to Cameron. She had been forced into the claim with promises of debt forgiveness. Rayan apologized to me with shaking hands. I saw myself in him, another boy dragged into rich men's games. The system offered fraud prosecution. I chose debt protection and witness immunity instead. Public reaction split again. Some praised mercy. Others called me weak. Cameron's media allies said I was bribing witnesses. Every choice became material for someone else's version of me. Arya warned that leadership meant being misunderstood by people committed to misunderstanding. I asked if that ever stopped hurting. She said no, but eventually truth built more durable witnesses than popularity. I hope she was right. Rayan's testimony exposed Cameron's intimidation network. Debt collectors, fake journalists, private investigators, campus informants. One name on the list stunned me. Professor Halden, my economics instructor. The same man who once said elite education required elite preparedness had been reporting my scholarship activity to Cameron's people for months. Suddenly, every cold comment, every unexplained administrative delay, every assignment barrier looked deliberate. I confronted Halden after class, not alone, not dramatically, but with legal counsel waiting outside. He denied everything until I placed the payment records on his desk. His face went gray. He said he had only monitored a suspicious student for institutional safety. I asked how much safety paid per month. He had no answer. The system suggested academic exposure. I approved a formal investigation, not a public smear. He deserved process even if he had denied me fairness. Arya later asked whether restraint was getting easier. I said no. I was just getting better at delaying the part of me that wanted to burn everything. She accepted that answer. I liked that she never demanded I become saintly. She only expected me not to lie about my anger. Around her, I could admit I wanted revenge without handing it the steering wheel. The audit results arrived like a bomb with footnotes. Velmont had overcharged scholarship students for administrative fees, underpaid contracted workers, and allowed donor families to influence disciplinary outcomes. Dean Marwick announced his retirement for health reasons before the report became public. The system identified strategic escape attempt. I wanted to drag him back into the light. Instead, we filed the report with regulators and gave affected students legal support. The campus erupted. Rich families called the audit an attack on tradition. Scholarship students finally spoke openly. Workers gathered near the service gate where I used to enter, holding printed wage claims instead of delivery bags. I stood with them, not in front of them. Reporters kept asking for my reaction, but this was not my moment alone. If I swallowed every story into my own rise, I would become another rich man using others as scenery. Arya noticed that choice before anyone else. She told me my father would have been proud. I snapped that she did not know what my father would feel. The words came out harsher than intended. Her eyes lowered, and I realized grief made me territorial over a man I barely remembered. I apologized. She said it was fine, but fine was a locked door. I had hurt the person who had protected me through the storm. I found her later outside the old music hall, where she said our families once held charity galas before everything collapsed. She confessed that as a child, she had promised my father she would help me if I ever returned. That promise had ruled her life. I told her she was allowed to be more than a promise to a dead man. She looked at me like no one had ever offered her permission to belong to herself. Something changed between us then, not loudly, not with confession, but with honesty. We were still surrounded by lawsuits and lies. Yet our conversations became the one place I did not feel watched by the world. She told me when my choices were becoming performative. I told her when her caution sounded like fear disguised as strategy. We irritated each other into becoming better, which was more useful than admiration. Cameron's trial date was set, but he still controlled parts of the safe corporate network. He used those levers to freeze worker restitution funds, claiming mismanagement. Overnight, people who had trusted me lost promised payments. My phone flooded with messages from workers asking if the program was fake. Shame hit harder than insult because now others were suffering from my incomplete control. The system opened a new task: recover funds without triggering corporate collapse. The impossible part was hidden inside the condition. If I moved too aggressively, Cameron would crash subsidiaries employing thousands and blame me. If I moved too slowly, workers would lose faith and families would go unpaid. Aria's team built a legal route. Tomas, a former accounting scholarship student who joined our audit team, found a financial weakness in Cameron's freeze order. Mother told me not to confuse careful with cowardly. Everyone gave me pieces. I had to choose the shape. We filed for emergency stewardship over the frozen welfare accounts and offered a public guarantee from my personal trust limit. It risked the funds I could actually access, not the untouchable billions people imagined. Cameron's lawyers mocked the amount as small compared to safe assets. That helped us. The judge saw I was putting available money behind workers while Cameron used legal fog. The freeze cracked. Payments resumed within 72 hours. The first group of workers gathered outside Velmont, not to praise me, but to collect what they were owed. That mattered more. Gratitude can become another chain if leaders demand it. I watched a driver check his payment, call his wife, and cry silently near his motorbike. My chest tightened. No supercar purchase could have matched that moment, no matter what the system's temptation menu once promised. Cameron escalated by offering me a private settlement. His message arrived through an old safe lawyer. He would recognize my identity, release a large portion of assets, and spare Mother from court cross-examination if I agreed to leave corporate control under his management for 5 years. It was a velvet cage. Wealth, safety, quiet. All he wanted was the machine that had made him powerful. I did not reject instantly. That scared me. For one full night, I imagined taking the deal. Mother safe. Sarah secure. Arya free from danger. Me rich enough to never deliver another order. People online would move on. Workers would get some money. Velmont would make reforms on paper. A reasonable person could justify it. That was the horror. Betrayal rarely arrives wearing horns. Sometimes it arrives as the most comfortable option. I told Arya about the offer at dawn. She did not tell me what to do. She asked what part of me wanted to accept. I said the tired part. The son. The brother. The boy who still checked prices before ordering food. She nodded and said those parts deserved compassion, but they did not get to sell everyone else back to Cameron. That answer hurt because it was fair. I rejected the settlement publicly, not with insults, but by releasing the offer to the court as evidence of control attempts. Cameron called it a confidential peace proposal. The judge called it relevant. Public opinion shifted again, not because people suddenly loved me, but because Cameron had shown his hunger too clearly. Men like him survive by making theft look administrative. Desperation made him sloppy. The system unlocked my father's second message. Zahir said restoration was not the same as generosity. Generosity gave from above. Restoration returned what should never have been taken. He warned that heirs often loved charity because it kept them superior, but justice required surrendering control. I paused the recording there. My father had been dead for years, yet he still found ways to argue with my ego. Those words forced my next decision. I converted the worker fund from a personal project into an independent trust with worker representatives holding voting power. Some advisors thought I was giving away influence too early. Maybe I was. But if every repair depended on my mood, then I was not fixing the system. I was decorating my own throne with kind intentions. The first worker vote rejected one of my proposals. They wanted direct emergency cash instead of a training program I thought sounded sustainable. My pride stung. Then an older driver explained that training did not help a family facing eviction this Friday. I shut up. He was right. Rich people love future solutions because they can survive the present. Restoration had to begin where the fire was. Arya smiled when I admitted defeat. I told her not to enjoy it too much. She said watching a billionaire heir lose an argument to common sense was her new hobby. I reminded her she was also a billionaire heiress. She said yes, but she had better posture while being corrected. For the first time, our laughter did not feel stolen from disaster. It felt like something the future might allow more often. Then Sarah was targeted. A fake account posted her school location and called her the weak link of the safe air. Mother found her before she saw the comments, but the damage was done. I stopped thinking like a reformer and started thinking like a brother. Every restraint lesson vanished. I wanted the account owner found, exposed, ruined, and afraid. The system returned with a red emergency option I had never seen before: protect by domination. Arya stood between me and the screen. She did not soften her voice. She said if I used terror to protect Sarah, I would teach every enemy that my principles ended at family. I shouted that maybe they should. She absorbed it without stepping back. Then Mother entered and said if my love required becoming Cameron, she would rather stay poor and unprotected. That broke through my rage more violently than any warning. We handled it legally, but not weakly. The platform preserved data. Police cybercrime units were pushed through proper channels. Veil security adjusted school protection without turning Sarah into a prisoner. The account traced back to the same reputation agency tied to Cameron. We filed witness intimidation charges. It felt too slow for my anger, but speed is not the only measure of strength. Sarah slept safely that night. That was the result I needed. I apologized to Arya the next morning. She said she was not hurt by my anger, only afraid of how naturally power fit around it. I told her I was afraid too. That was the truth no headline wanted. The lost heir was not pure. The delivery boy was not automatically noble. I had claws now, and sometimes my first instinct was to use them. The only difference was that people I loved were brave enough to grab my wrist. Cameron's trial began with the prosecution laying out 13 years of theft, forged documents, dead witnesses, redirected assets, fake death certification. He sat calmly, taking notes like the courtroom was a board meeting. When Mother testified again, he watched her with mild sadness, as if she had disappointed him by surviving. My fists clenched under the table until Arya quietly placed a pen in my hand. Holding something harmless helped. The defense tried to paint Mother as a paid liar, Arya as a controlling heiress, and me as an unstable youth intoxicated by sudden wealth. They played clips of me angry, edited from meetings where workers begged for wages. For a moment, I saw how easy it was to manufacture a villain from fragments. Then the prosecution played full context. The courtroom listened to workers describe their losses, and Cameron's polished story began to rot. The strongest witness was unexpected. Lance entered under subpoena, no longer smug, no longer surrounded. He testified that Velmont's elite students were encouraged to treat workers as disposable because complaints vanished when donor families intervened. He admitted his father had received favors through Cameron-linked contracts. He admitted humiliating me. The defense tried to make him look spoiled and unreliable. Lance said spoiled did not mean blind. Afterward, Lance avoided my eyes in the hallway. I thanked him for telling the truth. He looked uncomfortable and said not to make him sound heroic. I told him I had no intention of doing that. For the first time, he laughed without cruelty. It was small and awkward. Redemption, I realized, was not a dramatic bow. Sometimes it was a rich boy finally saying one useful true thing in a room built to hide truth. Arya testified last. Cameron's lawyer attacked her family's motives, suggesting the Veil Group wanted control of safe assets through me. Arya did not deny that families like hers always had interests. Instead, she said the difference between alliance and exploitation was consent, transparency, and the ability to walk away. Then she looked at me, not the lawyer, and said I had never belonged to the Veil family, the safe trust, or anyone else's plan. That line unsettled me more than the cross-examination. My whole life had been other people's plans. Mother's plan to hide me. My father's system. Arya's promise. Cameron's theft. The internet's fantasy. Even my revenge had sometimes felt pre-written by pain. If I was truly not owned by any plan, then every choice ahead became heavier. Freedom was not light. It was the end of excuses. The verdict took 3 days. During the wait, the internet turned the trial into entertainment again. People made edits of my first delivery video beside courtroom clips. Some used dramatic music. Some joked about wanting a billionaire system too. I wanted to tell them the system was not a cheat code. It was a knife that cut the hand holding it. But the internet loves power without consequences, because consequences are bad for views. The court found Cameron guilty on major fraud, conspiracy, and witness intimidation charges, while ordering further investigation into the old attack that killed my father's loyal staff. He did not collapse. He simply closed his eyes, as if calculating the next appeal. I felt no fireworks inside. The man who stole my name was finally caged, but 13 years did not return. Justice arrived, and grief remained seated beside it. Mother cried quietly, not from joy, but exhaustion. Sarah asked if everything was over. I wanted to say yes. Arya looked at me, and both of us knew better. Cameron was convicted, Velmont exposed, funds restored, but the final safe lock had not opened. My phone displayed one last message. Restoration threshold near completion. Final task pending. I almost hated the system for still having another demand. The final task appeared the next morning. Transfer control structure from bloodline inheritance to public interest governance while retaining accountable stewardship. Translation: give up absolute control before receiving it fully. I laughed so hard Mother thought I was breaking. My father's system was asking me to win the empire and then make sure no single heir could ever hold it the way Cameron had. Advisors panicked when I told them. They said the safe trust needed strong central leadership after chaos. Investors wanted confidence. Courts preferred clarity. Even some workers asked whether giving up control would let elites creep back in. Their fears were reasonable. That made the task harder. Absolute power would be simpler, faster, and emotionally satisfying. Shared power would be slower, uglier, and less likely to turn me into a replacement tyrant. I spent days studying governance models with Arya, Tomas, worker representatives, student advocates, and foundation lawyers. We built a structure where I retained temporary stewardship, but major decisions required independent boards, beneficiary councils, public audits, and legal triggers if any heir tried to override welfare protections. It was not romantic. It was paperwork as rebellion. For the first time, I understood that the opposite of corruption was not goodness. It was design that expected human weakness. When the proposal went public, everyone found a reason to complain. Business media said I was weakening a historic empire. Activists said I was not giving up enough. Former elites said workers could not understand complex assets. Workers said former elites could not understand unpaid rent. All of them had pieces of truth and ego mixed together. I listened longer than I wanted and changed what needed changing without surrendering the core. The final approval meeting happened in the restored safe headquarters, a building I had once seen only in burned memories. Mother sat in the front row. Sarah swung her feet nervously. Arya stood beside me as legal witness, not owner, not handler. When I signed the governance transfer, my phone screen turned silver. Final restoration task completed. Full inheritance unlocked. Absolute authority declined. Stewardship confirmed. The bank account that had broken the internet changed again. More assets unlocked than I could comprehend, but they no longer felt like mine alone. The numbers were attached to obligations, boards, funds, worker protections, student programs, and public ledgers. I had become wealthy beyond imagination by refusing to become the only hand on the vault. The system displayed my father's last message. You have returned what blood alone could not deserve. I watched the message 3 times. I expected closure, but what I felt was a quiet ache. My father had built a system brilliant enough to stop monsters, but not gentle enough to spare his own child pain. I loved him in pieces and resented him in others. Mother said that was allowed. Dead people did not become perfect just because they left us lessons. Arya and I visited the ruins of the old safe estate after the transfer. The main house was being rebuilt as an archive and public leadership school, not a private mansion. I stood where my memory said flames had been. Arya placed the silver toy plane in my palm, the one Mother had kept through every escape. She said I had flown farther than any of them planned. I told her I was tired of being a symbol. She said then be a person for a while. Being a person was harder than becoming a billionaire. I returned to classes, where professors now treated my assignments like legal documents. Students either avoided me or acted too friendly. Delivery workers saluted jokingly when they saw me, which embarrassed me more than insults had. Sarah demanded normal brother duties, including helping with math homework and losing at board games. Mother insisted I learn how to cook something besides survival food. The first time I ordered food instead of delivering it, I stared at the confirmation button for too long. The driver arrived soaked from rain, apologizing for being late. I gave him tea, a proper tip, and confirmed instantly. He looked suspicious, then grateful, then hurried away. It was such a small act that no headline would ever notice. But my old life noticed. The boy at the gate noticed. Belmont changed slowly. The service gate remained, but workers no longer had to use it unless they chose. Complaints against students now triggered review outside donor influence. Scholarship students received clear aid terms. Some rich students grumbled that the campus had lost its charm. I decided any charm requiring humiliation deserved burial. The college did not become fair overnight, but unfairness had paperwork against it now. Lance completed his restitution service by working with delivery staff during campus events. At first, everyone hated him. By the third month, he stopped trying to be liked and started being useful. He once asked me if people could change without being forgiven. I said yes. Forgiveness belonged to the hurt. Change belonged to the guilty. He nodded like that answer gave him work instead of comfort. Arya faced her own rebellion at Vale Group. Some executives disliked her alliance with me because it reduced their quiet influence over safe assets. She exposed 2 internal pressure campaigns and forced governance reforms inside her own family company. Watching her fight without using me as shield made me respect her more. The richest girl in college had always known my identity, but now I was finally learning hers beyond the title. Our relationship remained undefined long enough to annoy everyone. Reporters asked. Students guessed. Sarah teased. Mother pretended not to notice while noticing everything. Arya and I kept saying we were allies because that was safer. Then one evening, after a brutal board meeting, she fell asleep over reform documents in my office. I covered her with my jacket and realized safety had quietly become affection. I did not confess dramatically. I asked if, after all this ended, she wanted to eat street noodles without security clearing the stall first. She looked at me like I had proposed a crime. Then she said yes, but only if I stopped pretending that was not a date. My face heated worse than it had under Lance's insults. Billionaire hearings were easier than one honest smile from Arya Vale. Our first date was almost normal, if normal included 2 discreet guards pretending to be tourists. We ate too much, argued about spice levels, and walked through a market where nobody cared about safe or Vale. Arya bought cheap hair clips from a street vendor and looked happier than she had at any gala. I realized luxury had never impressed her. Choice did. That night, she told me the truth she had held back. Before my father died, he had asked the Vale family to protect me, but Arya had also made her own childish promise to marry me someday, because I had once shared sweets with her during a boring family event. She said it was embarrassing and legally meaningless. I laughed until she threatened to abandon me at the stall. Then I told her I did not remember the sweets, but I liked the promise better when she could choose it again. The final emotional trial did not come from Cameron, Lance, or Velmont. It came from inside my own home. Mother admitted she felt guilty every time she saw my new life, because she wondered whether hiding me had stolen more than it saved. I wanted to tell her no instantly, but the truth deserved more care. Hiding me had hurt. It had also kept me alive. Both could be true without canceling each other. We cried together for the years we could not recover. Sarah joined halfway through, mostly because she hated being left out of family crying. Mother apologized for every birthday spent running, every lie about my father, every time she made poverty sound normal so I would not notice fear. I told her she had not given me a small life. She had guarded a stolen one until I could reclaim it. After that, the safe name stopped feeling like a costume. I was still Ian Raymond in the places that mattered. The rooftop, the delivery routes, the cramped apartment memories, the boy counting coins beside his sister. I was also Ian Safe, heir to a fortune built by brilliance and wounded by greed. Choosing one name over the other felt like another trap. So I kept both, not as confusion, but as evidence. Before that anniversary arrived, one last battle forced me to prove the reforms could stand without turning me into a permanent savior. Cameron's appeal team discovered an old emergency clause inside the safe corporate charter. If the heir's leadership caused material instability, senior commercial partners could request temporary control over charitable assets. The phrase sounded harmless until lawyers explained it. Everything we had built for workers and students could be frozen again, this time under the language of responsible management. The request came from Severin Cho, chairman of Meridian Crown, a partner company that had smiled through every hearing while waiting for weakness. He was not loud like Cameron or spoiled like Lance. He was calm, admired, and terrifyingly patient. Publicly, he praised my courage. Privately, he filed documents claiming my reforms were emotional, inefficient, and dangerous to investor confidence. The system was gone, but the pattern remained. Powerful men still called justice instability when it touched their accounts. Severin's first move was clever. He did not attack worker funds directly. He offered to expand them through a corporate efficiency partnership. The proposal looked generous: bigger budgets, faster payments, professional management. Hidden in the clauses was the trap. Worker representatives would lose voting power, student councils would become advisory, and public audits would be delayed for confidentiality. He was not destroying the bridge. He was repainting it while removing the supports. Some trustees liked the offer because it made reform look respectable again. Even a few tired beneficiaries wondered whether professional management would reduce conflict. I could not blame them. Democracy was exhausting. Meetings were messy. People argued over details that rich executives could solve with one signature. But one signature was exactly how Cameron had stolen everything. Efficiency without accountability was just a luxury car driving toward the same cliff faster. Arya warned me that Severin would be harder to fight than Cameron because he did not look evil. He donated to hospitals, funded art programs, and remembered every assistant's name. His cruelty lived in design, not temper. He built systems where no single decision looked guilty, but every result favored people like him. I asked how to defeat a man who never raised his voice. Arya answered that we would have to make the consequences speak louder than his manners. We began tracing Meridian Crown's partnerships with schools, hospitals, and worker programs across the country. Tomas found the first pattern. Wherever Meridian took over professional management, beneficiary voting disappeared within a year. Fees rose. Complaint channels became automated walls. Public reports became glossy success stories with no raw data. The victims did not look dramatic enough for headlines. They simply received less help, slower, while executives congratulated themselves on sustainability. Anika gathered stories from former beneficiaries of Meridian programs. A widow whose aid was delayed until she lost her room. A student whose appeal vanished after a donor objected to his activism. A contract worker injured during a campus event and redirected through forms until the deadline expired. None of them knew Severin's name. That was his genius. He made harm feel like procedure, so nobody knew where to aim their anger. I wanted to expose everything immediately, but Arya stopped me. Severin had built his reputation over decades. If we released accusations without structure, he would drown us in politeness and lawyers. We needed a public test, a place where he had to explain why people who depended on funds should not help govern them. The opportunity came through Velmont's annual Future Leadership Summit, where Severin was scheduled to speak about ethical capitalism. Even the title made my teeth hurt. Before the summit, Severin invited me to dinner. Arya told me not to go alone. I went with legal counsel, which made Severin smile as if I had brought a toy sword to a quiet war. He said he admired my passion, then asked whether I planned to spend my whole life letting wounded people vote on complex financial decisions. I said wounded people understood consequences better than executives insulated from them. He called that beautiful and naive. Then he made the offer personal. He said he could help me become untouchable: global education reform, political influence, a clean public image, protection for Mother and Sarah, and a respectable role for Arya. All I had to do was accept that institutions could not be run from pain. I asked what they should be run from. He lifted his glass and said stability. I had heard Cameron call theft business. Severin called control stability. For one dangerous moment, I understood why people surrendered to men like him. Cameron threatened. Severin relieved. He offered to take the burden, smooth the conflict, handle the ugly details, and leave me with applause. The tired part of me leaned toward it. I imagined fewer meetings, fewer attacks, fewer nights wondering if I had made the wrong call. Then I remembered the delivery drivers who had voted against my proposal because their rent was due Friday. I refused the dinner offer, and Severin did not look offended. That worried me more. He said young heirs often confused resistance with wisdom, but time humbled everyone. As I left, he added that Arya's family would eventually prefer a stable partner over a romantic rebellion. I did not answer, but the sentence followed me into the car. Men like Severin did not only attack assets. They attacked the trust between people protecting those assets. Arya noticed my silence before I spoke. I told her Severin had implied the Vale family might abandon the alliance. She looked out the window for a long moment, then admitted some of her relatives already supported Meridian's proposal. They believed I was morally impressive but strategically risky. I asked what she believed. She turned back to me and said risk was not always the opposite of safety. Sometimes it was the cost of refusing a prettier cage. The summit arrived with cameras, sponsors, and students trained to applaud wealth in elegant sentences. Severin spoke first. He described compassion as a resource requiring disciplined administration. He praised my story, calling me proof that opportunity could rise from hardship, then gently suggested movements led by pain must mature into institutions led by expertise. The audience nodded. He had turned my entire life into a stepping stone for removing power from the people I wanted to protect. When my turn came, I did not attack him by name. I showed 3 charts from Meridian-managed programs, rising administrative fees, shrinking beneficiary approvals, and disappearing appeals. Then I played testimony clips from people who had been processed out of help by beautiful systems. The room shifted. Severin kept smiling, but his fingers stopped moving. I asked the audience one question. If dignity funds exist for the vulnerable, why is vulnerability the first voice removed from management? Severin answered smoothly that personal stories mattered, but large systems required professional distance. Anika stood from the student section and asked whether distance was another word for not having to see who suffered. A worker representative followed by asking why experts always arrived after money was collected, but before decisions were shared. The summit became something Severin had not planned, a room where procedure had to defend itself in front of people it usually erased. The clip went viral, not because I destroyed him, but because he did not know how to look humble while being questioned by a cafeteria worker. His supporters called the exchange disrespectful. That helped us more than any slogan. People began asking why respect only flowed upward in elite spaces. Within a week, Meridian's emergency clause request was no longer a quiet legal matter. It was a public referendum on who deserved a hand near the wheel. Severin retaliated by leaking selective financial projections showing our participatory model cost more than centralized management. The numbers were technically true and morally incomplete. Yes, translation services cost money. Appeals cost money. Independent audits cost money. Paying workers on time cost money. He framed dignity as inefficiency because the old model had hidden costs inside human suffering. I recorded a response, deleted it, rewrote it, and finally released the boring full ledger. The full ledger did not trend as quickly as Scandal, but it endured. It showed every cost beside every outcome. Fewer dropouts, faster wage recovery, reduced legal claims, higher worker retention, better scholarship completion rates. Tomas joked that spreadsheets were finally getting revenge. I told him never to say that in public. Still, I understood. Truth often looks dull until someone puts it beside the lie it exposes. While Severin fought us publicly, his allies targeted Arya privately. A Veilboard faction proposed removing her from the partnership committee, claiming her closeness to me created conflict of interest. She listened to their arguments without blinking, then placed her own report on the table. It documented years of Veil executives benefiting from Meridian deals without disclosure. Her relatives had expected emotion. She gave them evidence. By evening, 2 executives resigned, and one aunt stopped calling her a sentimental child. That victory cost her. Arya returned to the office pale with exhaustion, carrying the kind of loneliness only family betrayal creates. I wanted to tell her she had won. Instead, I asked what she had lost. She looked surprised, then admitted those people had raised her after her parents died. Exposing them felt necessary and brutal. I held her hand, and neither of us pretended policy made the pain clean. The final hearing on Severin's emergency clause took place in a commercial court where everyone spoke as if lives were footnotes. Meridian argued that my leadership endangered asset stability. Our side argued that stability had to include the people the assets existed to serve. The judge asked whether beneficiary voting could slow urgent decisions. I answered yes. Then I said theft was also fast, and nobody called it efficient when poor people did it. Mother attended despite my protests. After the hearing, she told me she had watched rich men discuss the vulnerable like weather for too many years. She said I was learning not to ask permission to be human in rooms designed to remove humanity. Coming from her, The words landed heavier than any public praise. She had once survived by hiding. Now she was teaching me how not to apologize for being seen. The court rejected Meridian's request and upheld the governance transfer. More importantly, the ruling recognized beneficiary representation as a stabilizing safeguard, not an emotional risk. Legal writers called it unusual. Worker groups called it precedent. Severin called it disappointing. I called it proof that slow structures could survive elegant attacks. That night, no one celebrated with champagne. The Worker Council ordered spicy rice boxes, and I confirmed the delivery personally. After Severin failed, quiet enemies became louder. A group of wealthy Velmont alumni threatened to pull funding unless the college restored donor privileges. Their letter claimed merit was being replaced by grievance politics. I read it twice, then sent it to the transparency portal with a note inviting them to explain which hidden fees they considered merit. Half withdrew their names within hours. Sunlight did not solve everything, but it made hypocrisy sweat. The alumni fight created an unexpected problem. Some scholarship students began treating me like a shield who could block every insult, every policy, every unfair grade. I understood the impulse, but it frightened me. Dependence can grow even from protection. When a student demanded I force a professor to change a grade without review, I refused. He accused me of becoming elite. Maybe to him, fairness felt like betrayal when it did not give the answer he needed. I spent that night angry and ashamed. Arya said leadership meant disappointing people without becoming dismissive. Anika was less gentle. She said if we built a movement where my approval replaced old privilege, then we had only changed the portrait on the wall. The next week, we strengthened independent appeal processes and removed my informal influence from student cases. It hurt my ego to become less useful. It helped the work become more real. Sarah understood the lesson faster than I did. She told me a hero who has to personally save everyone is just a system failure with good hair. I asked where she learned that. She said from watching me forget to sleep. Mother laughed so hard she had to sit down. My little sister had no interest in worshiping me, which made her one of the most important people in my life. To prove I could step back, I took 1 week away from daily foundation decisions. It was supposed to be rest, but at first I spent the days checking dashboards like a nervous addict. No collapse happened. Worker councils voted. Student appeals moved. Arya handled partnership issues. Tomas corrected a budget error. Anika insulted 2 trustees into reading policy. The world did not end because I stopped holding every thread. During that week, I delivered 1 order under a guest account for a documentary training program about platform work. Not for content, not for pity, just to remember the route. The customer was a Velmont freshman who did not recognize me. He accepted the food, said thank you, and confirmed immediately. Nothing magical happened. No system activated. I stood outside his dorm smiling like an idiot because ordinary respect felt like a miracle. The training program became one of our strongest reforms. Every first-year student receiving campus privileges had to complete service ethics modules co-taught by workers, not administrators. Rich parents complained that their children were not there to be lectured by drivers. A worker named Imran replied during a public session that drivers had been lectured by rich children for years without tuition credit. The clip spread faster than our official announcements ever did. Lance volunteered for that program after finishing his required service. I suspected reputation repair. He admitted that was part of it. Then he said reputation repair was the selfish reason that got him into the room, but not the reason he stayed. I respected the honesty. People rarely change for pure reasons. Sometimes a selfish door opens into useful work if consequences keep it from becoming theater. Arya and I finally visited the street where we had supposedly shared sweets as children. Neither of us remembered the shop clearly, but an old vendor remembered our family's security teams blocking half the road. He laughed and said rich children always looked lonelier than poor ones because they were not allowed to run. Arya bought sweets for every child nearby. For a few minutes, she looked like the little girl behind the glass had escaped. She asked if I ever wished she had broken the rules and told me my identity earlier. I answered honestly. Some days, yes. Other days, I understood that knowing too early might have turned me into someone waiting to be rescued instead of someone learning to stand. She said that answer was unfairly mature. I told her not to worry. I still planned to be petty about other things. The pettiness arrived when a luxury magazine asked to photograph me beside a delivery bike covered in gold paint. They called it symbolic. I called it disgusting. They suggested a headline about rising from the streets. I asked if the photographer had ever paid a late delivery penalty from a hungry family's grocery budget. The interview ended quickly. Arya later said my diplomacy needed polishing. I said some things deserved sandpaper. Instead, we funded a worker-owned delivery cooperative pilot near Velmont. Not a charity, not a publicity stunt, but a business where drivers held shares, controlled policies, and negotiated with campus vendors directly. Investors laughed at first. Then restaurants joined because service improved. Drivers stayed because income stabilized. Students liked it because orders arrived without workers being punished for every delay. The impossible task kept echoing, delivered dignity. The cooperative faced sabotage almost immediately. Competing platforms lowered prices temporarily, spread rumors about unreliable drivers, and offered bonuses to lure workers away. Imran wanted to fight with anger. Tomas wanted spreadsheets. Anika wanted both. We chose transparency, real pay comparisons, worker testimonies, restaurant data, and public delivery guarantees. It did not crush the competition overnight, but it made exploitation visible enough that cheap prices began to look expensive. Watching the cooperative survive taught me something the inheritance never could. Billions could launch a project, but only shared ownership made people defend it when attacks came. Drivers argued fiercely over routes, wages, and leadership. Their meetings were louder than boardrooms and far more honest. At first, I tried to mediate too much. Imran finally told me to stop acting like the rich landlord of empowerment. I deserved that. I apologized and took a back seat. The cooperative made decisions I would not have made, some brilliant, some messy, but they were theirs. That mattered. My father's system had taught me restraint through impossible tasks. Ordinary people taught me restraint through telling me to sit down and let them finish speaking. The second method was less dramatic and probably healthier. Cameron's appeal failed during this period, almost quietly compared to the trial. The court upheld the conviction and expanded investigation into old violence around my father's death. When the news came, Mother sat very still. I asked what she needed. She said she needed to stop living as if the door might burst open. That kind of healing had no press release. It happened when she planted herbs on our balcony without planning an escape route. Sarah started inviting friends over without asking if it was safe first. That seemed small until I remembered how often she used to lower her voice around strangers. She was becoming a child again in pieces. Not the same child she might have been, but one who could be loud without calculating danger. Of every restoration project, that was the one I watched most carefully. Systems could protect funds. Family had to relearn breathing. Aria's healing looked different. She resigned from 2 ceremonial veil positions that existed only to display obedience and kept the roles where she could change rules. Society pages called it rebellion. She called it schedule management. One evening, she admitted she no longer wanted to be the perfect daughter of any legacy, including mine. I told her I did not want to perfect anything. I wanted the person who argued with me when my ideas were stupid. She said that was dangerously romantic by my standards. I said I was improving slowly. Then I asked if she regretted waiting for me all those years. She thought for a long time before answering. She said she regretted the silence, not the hope. Hope had kept a place for me in a world trying to erase me. Silence had let me suffer alone. Both truths lived together, and our future had to make room for both. We created the Open Gate Initiative on the anniversary month. Scholarships, worker protections, student legal aid, and cooperative business support tied together under one public framework. The name came from the gate where my humiliation went viral. I did not want a statue there. I wanted a policy strong enough that no worker or poor student had to depend on a miracle notification to be treated as human. The launch nearly collapsed because donor guests expected a gala, while worker representatives expected a meeting. We chose the meeting. No chandeliers, no stage tiers, no gold-painted bike. Just tables, ledgers, translated documents, complaint channels, and food from local vendors paid fairly. Some media outlets called it visually boring. Good. People who need help should not have to decorate another person's inspiration. At the launch, Mother spoke without warning. She was not on the program, which made the event team panic beautifully. She told everyone that hiding a child teaches you the value of doors, which ones lock, which ones open, and which ones only pretend to. She said the Open Gate initiative mattered because dignity should never depend on being discovered as secretly important. The room stood for her, and I cried before she finished. Sarah followed by accusing me of crying in public and ruining my billionaire image. The room laughed, and I let them. Once, I had feared every public reaction because laughter usually meant humiliation. Now laughter could mean family, relief, or a room breathing together after too much truth. That was one of the strangest forms of wealth I gained, learning that not every sound from a crowd was dangerous. Severin Cho attended the launch uninvited, standing near the back with a polite expression. He congratulated me afterward and said I had built something difficult to absorb. I noticed the word absorb, not defeat. He still saw the world as a place where powerful systems swallowed smaller ones. I told him Open Gate was not for sale. He smiled and said everything becomes negotiable eventually. I said only if the guardians fall asleep. That night, I updated the governance rules again. Any acquisition, merger, or partnership involving Open Gate required approval from worker councils, student representatives, independent auditors, and community boards. Advisors groaned at the complexity. I smiled because complexity was the point. If someone wanted to steal dignity now, they would have to face the people attached to it, not just a signature. The system did not return to congratulate me. No glowing message, no reward, no father's voice. Just ordinary fatigue and a stack of documents taller than my pride. I thought I would feel disappointed. Instead, I felt adult in the most inconvenient way. A miracle had started the journey, but miracles are terrible maintenance plans. The real work had to survive on habits, rules, relationships, and the stubborn refusal to make humiliation profitable again. As the anniversary approached, Velmont asked to archive the original Gate footage for educational use. I refused at first. I hated the idea of my worst moment becoming institutional content. Then Imran suggested using it only with my commentary and worker consent, not as tragedy entertainment, but as a case study in power imbalance. I agreed reluctantly. Watching the video again, I saw less shame than I expected. I saw a boy holding himself together. In the footage, Lance looked cruel, Arya looked frozen, and I looked exhausted. But I also saw the exact second before everything changed, when I chose not to become the insult thrown at me. That was the real activation, not the billions, not the system, the choice. I paused the video there during the first educational session and told students that dignity often looks unimpressive while it is happening. Only later does history add lighting. The students were quieter after that. A few looked uncomfortable. One delivery worker in the back wiped his eyes and pretended not to. I did not turn it into a grand moment. We moved into policy training, complaint routes, and confirmation rules. Practical details saved more people than dramatic speeches. Still, when the session ended, a freshman walked up and confirmed an old order on his phone just to show he understood. It was silly and somehow perfect. By the end of the anniversary week, the cooperative had expanded, Open Gate had funded its first outside campus, and Velmont's new dean signed a binding worker-student dignity compact. None of it felt final. That was the lesson I kept learning. Good work does not end like a revenge story, with enemies defeated and heroes glowing. It continues like rent, medicine, meals, and paperwork. Repetition is where sincerity either proves itself or dies. On the evening before the exact anniversary, I went back to the service gate alone. It had been repainted, but the ground remembered. I stood where rainwater had filled my shoes and let the memory arrive without pushing it away. I remembered the coin, the hunger, the false complaint, the black screen. Then I remembered everything after. Mother testifying, Arya staying, Sarah laughing, workers voting, doors opening. Pain had started the story, but it had not been allowed to write the ending. Arya found me there because she always seemed to know when I was pretending to need solitude. She asked if I wanted the gate removed. I thought about it. Removing it might feel symbolic, but symbols could lie. Instead, I said we should keep it and put the worker lounge entrance beside it, brighter and open. Let the old wound stand next to the repair. Arya nodded and said that sounded like me, inconveniently sentimental and structurally annoying. We stood there until Mother and Sarah arrived with food from the same restaurant that had started everything. Sarah said anniversaries required snacks and emotional supervision. Mother handed me the bag and told me to confirm delivery. I laughed, but my hands trembled when I opened the app. For 1 year, that simple button had carried the weight of humiliation, inheritance, and repair. I pressed confirm, and nothing happened. That was the gift. No task appeared because the task had become ordinary life. I paid the bill, tipped properly, and watched Sarah steal fries before Mother could stop her. Arya leaned against the gate, smiling at the scene like it was more valuable than any board victory. For once, nobody was performing strength. We were just standing in a place that had hurt us and refusing to let it remain only a wound. I asked Mother whether she ever imagined we would return here like this. She said she had imagined returning many times, but usually in fear, never with food getting cold because we were laughing too much. Then she touched the gate lightly and whispered a prayer for the people who had not survived the old safe fire, the workers still fighting smaller battles, and the boy I had been before the world remembered my name. Arya handed me the silver toy plane, and I placed the old coin beside it on the gate ledge for a moment. 2 small objects, one from a stolen childhood and one from a public insult, reflected the campus lights. Sarah asked which one mattered more. I told her the plane reminded me where I came from, and the coin reminded me what I must never become. She accepted that answer, then asked if either could buy dessert. We left the gate without taking a photo. Some moments become weaker when turned into proof. I carried the coin and plane back in my pocket while Arya carried the empty food bag, joking that she had finally become my delivery assistant. The next morning would mark exactly 1 year since the system awakened. I did not know it would speak one last time. I only knew I was no longer waiting for it. A year after the night at the gate, Velmont invited me to speak at worker-student orientation. I stood beneath the same glass canopy where Lance had refused to confirm my order. New students sat beside drivers, cleaners, cafeteria staff, and scholarship families. No one looked comfortable, which meant the room was honest. I told them respect should not depend on balance, surname, uniform, or who held the receipt. I did not tell them humiliation was a blessing. It was not. I did not tell them poverty made me pure. It did not. I told them power had offered me revenge many times, and sometimes I wanted it badly enough to scare myself. The only reason I did not become another Cameron was because people around me kept reminding me that being hurt did not give me permission to hurt smaller people. After the speech, a delivery worker about my age approached and said rich students still made him nervous. I told him they made me nervous too, just differently now. Then I showed him the direct complaint line, wage guarantee policy, and worker lounge entrance. His eyes widened like I had handed him a secret map. I wish someone had handed me one earlier. Since they had not, building it became the next best thing. Lance appeared after the crowd left and handed me a coin. For 1 second, my body remembered the old insult. Then he explained it was the same coin he had thrown that night, recovered from the security office evidence bag. He said he did not deserve to keep it. I took it, not as forgiveness, but as proof that objects could change meaning when people finally stopped hiding from what they had done. I keep that coin beside the silver toy plane. One reminds me of the life stolen from me. The other reminds me of the life I almost let bitterness steal. Between them sits my old cracked phone, inactive now. No glowing tasks. No impossible rewards. No system judging every choice. Sometimes I miss the certainty, but then I remember certainty was never freedom. It was training wheels on a road made of fire. Cameron appealed, of course. Men like him treat consequences as temporary inconvenience. But the new safe governance structure held. Funds continued. Workers voted. Students challenged policies. Arya reformed veil partnerships. Mother healed slowly. Sarah grew louder. I kept studying, not because I needed a degree to prove worth, but because the boy who won that scholarship deserved to finish what he started. My bank account still made headlines whenever public filings updated, but the number no longer belonged to gossip the same way. It was tied to transparent funds, schools, clinics, worker protections, and legal reserves. People online still called me Delivery Billionaire, Scam Prince, Lucky Dog, or System King. I stopped correcting every nickname. A name given by strangers has only the power you rent to it. The last message from the system appeared exactly 1 year after activation. I was confirming a delivery order at a campus event, laughing because Arya had deliberately ordered from the same restaurant as that night. My phone lit up without sound. Final observation, impossible task ongoing. Dignity delivered is never complete. Then the screen went dark, and the system vanished from the device forever. I looked around the campus that had once treated me like a service error. Students moved past workers without blocking them. A driver drank tea inside the lounge. Scholarship freshmen argued loudly with a finance officer without fear. Arya stood beside the gate, smiling softly. Sarah waved from Mother's side like she owned the place. Maybe in the only way that mattered, she did. We all did. When people ask how my bank account broke the internet, they expect a secret app, a lost inheritance, a billionaire twist. All of that happened. But the real answer is simpler and harder. A rich boy looked down on a delivery worker, and for once, the world did not move on. The insult became evidence. The evidence became a door. The door became a responsibility. I was humiliated before I was powerful, and that matters. Not because suffering made me better, but because I know exactly how power feels from underneath. I know the sound of a delayed confirmation, the weight of a false complaint, the silence of people watching cruelty for entertainment. I also know that money can answer those things only if the person holding it refuses to become the next hand pressing someone else down. So I still confirmed deliveries instantly. I still read every worker report. I still let Anika, Tomas, Arya, Mother, Sarah, and even critics challenge decisions that feel too easy. I still keep the coin where I can see it. Not because I am trapped by the past, but because forgetting is expensive. Cameron forgot people were people. Lance forgot workers had names. Velmont forgot dignity was not a luxury service. And me? I nearly forgot that revenge can wear the face of justice when it knows you are wounded. The system gave me billions after one impossible task, but the task never truly ended. Every day, I decide whether wealth becomes a wall, a weapon, or a bridge. I do not always choose perfectly, but I choose with witnesses now, and that has saved me more than money ever did. In the end, everyone thought I was a broke delivery boy until my bank account broke the internet. They were wrong about the word broke. I was tired, angry, underpaid, and hidden, but not broken. Broken things cannot carry a mother's fear, a sister's hope, a dead father's warning, a rich girl's promise, and still stand at the gate choosing dignity over destruction. I was not broken. I was delayed. Now when I walk through Velmont Royal, I do not enter through the service gate unless I want to remember. The main doors open, not because I am richer than the people inside, but because we changed who those doors were allowed to reject. That is the only flex that still matters to me. Not the billions. Not the headlines. Not the viral video. Just a door opening for someone who once stood outside, waiting to be confirmed.